Question. Order. I gave the additional one sub, not two. Question number 2, David Bennett.
Mr Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Finance. What will be the main features of the government's economic plan during this term of Parliament?
Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the government's economic plan will reinforce all those decisions and actions taken by New Zealanders over the last 4 or 5 years that have put this economy in the right direction. It grew by 3.9% in the year to June. 83,000 new jobs have been created in the past 12 months, and on average, wages are rising faster than inflation. So we want to build on this progress, first by keeping our spending under control, getting back to surplus and reducing debt. Secondly, by continuing to encourage what is now strong business investment and the enterprise needed to create new jobs. And thirdly, we'll focus on rewarding New Zealanders' hard work, for instance, by reducing ACC levies and with modest tax reductions when we can afford them.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question, David Bennett.
What reports has he received confirming the government's economic program is helping to support more jobs?
Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the most important thing to support more jobs is businesses having the confidence to invest another dollar and employ another person, and fortunately, more New Zealand businesses are doing that. Since the House last was sitting, Statistics New Zealand has reported the unemployment rate fell to 5.6% as at the 30th of June. The number of people unemployed in the June quarter fell by 9,000 and the number of people employed increased by 10,000. This encouraging labour force data is backed up by other indicators such as employment confidence among businesses. Total job advertising increased by 2.4% in September, following a 1.7% lift in August, according to the ANZ Job Ads Survey.
Supplementary question, David Bennett.
How is New Zealand's improving economy being reflected in confidence among manufacturers?
Well, Mr Speaker, we track manufacturing because the opposition decided a couple of years ago it was in crisis. Last week, the BNZ Performance of Manufacturing Index came out for September. It rose by 1.1 points to 58.1. The manufacturing sector has now expanded for 25 consecutive months. Beginning in about the month the opposition said it was in crisis.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question, David Bennett.
Since the election, what reports has he received supporting the government's economic plan?
Honourable Bill
Mr Speaker,
English.
well, a number of reports, but one particularly strong endorsement. The report said, and I quote, "Well, I think at the end of the day, people wanted stability, they wanted prosperity. They saw the current government, as for now, delivering that for them, and they weren't prepared to take what they saw as some kind of risk for a change." And that was the then Labor leader, David Cunliffe.
Supplementary question, David Clark.
Mr Speaker, given the forecast of his own department that exports as a percentage of GDP will this very year fall to their lowest level in 25 years, will he finally concede that he has failed to rebalance the economy?
Order. Order. Honourable Bill.
Mr Speaker,
Order.
Mr Speaker,
Order.
no.
Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, no. The measure the member is using is, as I understand it anyway, from what he said, the nominal measure, which actually isn't the volume measure. But Mr Speaker, the government, rather than attacking the export sector for non-performance, as the opposition are, we have been backing them solidly while they've been dealing with the headwinds of a high exchange rate. As the exchange rate comes off and our exporters show they've become very competitive, we expect them to perform pretty well, actually, over the next few years.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, David Clark.
Has he in the past month come up with any new ideas to rebalance the economy, given that his own department forecasts export as a percentage of GDP by March 2016 to be the worst since Robert Muldoon became Prime Minister, the worst export to GDP ratio in 40 years.
Order. Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, as I pointed out before, our exporters have done a fantastic job, given they've been dealing with the highest exchange rate since the Second World War, and despite that they've been able to hold their own, and as the pressure comes off they will be able to succeed. But of course, alongside growing exports, we have to do some domestic work in New Zealand, for instance expanding the housing supply. So resources that are applied to that very vital task won't be able to be applied to exports until the construction catch-up is complete.
Speaker.
Supplementary question.
No, I seek leave to table a document, Mr Speaker.
Source of the document?
From the Parliamentary Library.
And what is the document?
It's outlining the extent of the Minister's abject failure to rebalance the economy.
Order. Order. Member will resume his seat. It is a privilege the member is asking for, the ability to table a document. He stands and describes the document without that form of embellishment, and then I might consider putting the leave. I'll give the member a second chance.
Yep. Mr Speaker, I seek leave to table a document outlining the extent of the Minister's failure to rebalance the economy.
Order. I gave the member a second chance. He hasn't accepted it. I'm not even putting the leave. Question number 3, Dr Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister and asks, how many